Tonight's story is not clean. It's not heroic, and it definitely isn't simple. It starts with a mistake, or maybe it started long before that. A late night, a blurred decision, a moment that felt small, but refused to stay small. He thought it was just another secret, something that would fade with time. It didn't, because 3 words changed everything. I'm pregnant, and from that second on, there was no undo button. This is a Reddit confession. Title: I got her pregnant. Let's begin. The bathroom fan was a low, steady hum. It felt like it was drilling into my skull. While I stared at the plastic stick on the marble counter, it was small, light, harmless looking, but it carried the weight of a tombstone. 2 pink lines. I looked at the digital clock on the wall. 3:14 a.m., and I remember thinking, my life officially ended. At that exact minute, she stood in the doorway, her face pale, her eyes wide. There was a kind of terror in them that made my stomach twist. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. The silence in that tiny bathroom was louder than any scream. A cold sensation crawled up my spine because I knew something was wrong with me. I wasn't thinking about her, or the baby, or our future. I was thinking about my bank account, my career, the flight to Chicago in 3 days for promotion. That would change everything. I looked at her, and I didn't see the woman I loved. I saw an obstacle. That was the first moment. I realized I might be a monster. I reached for her shoulder, but my hand felt heavy, like it was made of lead. I told her it would be okay. The words tasted like ash. She searched my face, looking for joy or panic, anything that matched the storm inside her. All I gave her was a blank stare. I was already calculating weeks, clinics, conversations, angles, ways to frame this, so it didn't look like I was forcing her hand. I led her back to bed, tucked the covers around her, like she was made of glass. But my mind was miles away. I stared at the ceiling for hours, listening to her breathing, slow and soften, until she drifted off. Every breath she took felt like a clock ticking, a deadline. I thought about my father, the way he looked at my mother when they thought I wasn't watching. That thin layer of resentment. Under every "I love you," under every shared meal, I swore I would never be that man. And yet, I felt the same poison, bubbling in my chest. When the sun started bleeding through the blinds, I felt clarity, not the good kind, the kind a predator feels when it realizes the trap is closing. I looked at her sleeping face. She looked innocent, and I hated her for it. I hated that she had the power to tie me to a life I never wanted. I went to the kitchen, started making coffee, like it was any other Saturday. I heard her moving in the bedroom, and my heart began to race. The conversation was coming. I had to play the supportive partner while planting seeds of doubt. I had to make her think. A child right now would be a mistake for her, not just for me. It had to be her idea. That was the plan. Before she even stepped into the kitchen, she walked in wearing my oversized sweatshirt. She looked small, fragile. She sat at the table, wrapped her hands around a mug, but she didn't drink. "I'm scared," she said. I took her hand, looked her straight in the eye, and lied. "I'm scared too, but we'll do whatever is best for us." I emphasized us. I wanted her to feel the weight of everything we had built. I talked about her dream of going back to school, how hard that would be with a newborn. I mentioned the debt we were still paying. I didn't tell her what to do. I just painted a picture. Dark, heavy, difficult. I watched her face fall as reality settled in, and I felt it, that surge of power, seeing how easily I could shift her perspective. It was intoxicating and terrifying. By noon, we were on the couch, silence thick enough to choke on. She asked me what I really thought. That was the moment, the open loop, that had kept me awake all night. I didn't answer directly. Instead, I asked her if she felt ready to give up everything we had built. Her eyes filled with tears, and I knew I had her. I was winning, but the prize felt cursed. "I'll support you no matter what," I said. And then I added the but. There's always a but. I told her I didn't want her resenting this child, or me, 10 years from now, because she felt forced into something she wasn't ready for. I was twisting her own fears into evidence, convincing her Her biological clock was a mistake. Guilt clawed at my throat. I swallowed it. If I didn't, my life as I knew it was over. The afternoon dragged, like a slow-motion crash. We walked through the park. A young couple struggled with a crying toddler and a stroller that wouldn't fold. I made sure she saw it. I didn't speak. I just squeezed her hand, right as the child let out a piercing shriek. She flinched. Point for me. We passed the playground. I didn't look at the laughing kids. I looked at the parents. Gray, exhausted, hollow-eyed, like sleep had abandoned them years ago. I was building a case, without saying a word, a lawyer in the court, of my own convenience. And she was the jury. I was determined to sway. When we got back to the apartment, the atmosphere had changed. It wasn't just shock anymore. It was dread, heavy, looming. She walked into the spare room, the one we once talked about turning into an office, or maybe a guest room. She just stood there. I stayed in the hallway, watching her through the crack in the door. She ran her fingers along the wallpaper, and I could tell she was imagining a crib. For a split second, I felt it, a flicker of regret. I imagined a little girl, with her eyes, and my stubbornness. But then I remembered the promotion, the flight to Chicago, the freedom of a Saturday night, with no responsibilities, the man I wanted to become. And that man didn't carry a diaper bag. I walked in, wrapped my arms around her from behind. I whispered that we had time, that we didn't have to decide today. And then I mentioned the insurance, how the new job in Chicago would cover everything if we handled it before the move. I felt her stiffen. I had gone too far, too fast. She turned slowly, and the look she gave me, I will never forget it. It was realization. Sharp, clear. She saw the calculation in my eyes. She saw the man behind the mask. She asked me if I had already looked up the insurance details. I couldn't lie. I said I just wanted to be prepared for every scenario. She pushed me away, walked out. The front door slammed, and I stood alone in that empty room that was supposed to be an office. That's when it hit me. I hadn't just risked the relationship. I had triggered something I couldn't control. 1 hour passed. 2, 4. The sun went down. The apartment turned into a cavern of shadows. I called her. Voicemail. Again, voicemail. Panic crept in, not for her safety, but for me. If she left now, she would take the choice with her. She could have the baby out of spite. She could tell everyone what I had tried to do, my reputation, my perfect life, cracking, because I couldn't keep my mouth shut. Around midnight, I heard the key in the lock. My heart hammered. She walked in, not alone. She carried a small bag. Her face was cold, determined. She didn't look at me. She went straight to the bedroom, started packing. I tried to speak. She raised a hand. Silence. She said she had gone to her sister's house. They had talked. She said she knew exactly what I was trying to do. She called me a coward, a manipulator. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but nothing came out. I just watched as she dismantled our life. In minutes. Then she stopped, looked at me. I made a decision. My heart stopped. I thought she was leaving, keeping the baby, taking me down with her. But that's not what she said. She looked me dead in the eye. She said she would go through with the procedure. On one condition, I had to sign the papers, walk her into the clinic, look the doctor in the eye. She wanted me to carry the weight. Physically, I agreed instantly. I thought I had won. I thought I was getting exactly what I wanted. Then, as she packed, she dropped a folder on the bed. I picked it up, opened it. Printouts, my private emails, messages to my boss in Chicago. 2 weeks ago, before we even knew about the pregnancy. Emails where I said I was looking for a reason to end things with her, so I could move without any baggage. My blood turned to ice. She had known. For weeks, she had known. While I played the supportive boyfriend, while I calculated, while I lied, she looked at me and smiled. Not a happy smile, the smile of someone who had set a trap. She said the procedure wasn't the only thing planned. She had already sent the emails to my new boss, to my parents, to hers. By a Monday morning, everyone would know exactly who I was. As she leaned close enough that I could feel her breath, and she whispered, she lied about the test. It was never positive. She had faked it, the whole thing. She wanted to see who I would choose, her or myself. And standing there, with my future collapsing around me. I realized something. She already had her answer. I stood there, frozen, staring at the two pink lines on the bathroom counter. Only now, I could see it. The ink, the slight smudge at the edge. They were drawn on, with a marker. Relief hit me first. Sharp, electric, like someone had pulled me back from the edge of a cliff. But the relief didn't last, because right behind it came something heavier, the crushing realization of what I had just exposed, what I had lost. And then she started laughing, high-pitched, frantic, not joy, not hysteria, something in between. She reached into her bag, pulled out another test, a digital one. She threw it at me. It hit my chest, fell to the floor. I looked down. The screen was glowing in the dim light. One word, pregnant. My stomach dropped. She whispered that she wasn't sure which one was the lie anymore. She didn't know if she was lying to me, or if I was lying to her, or if the universe was just playing a sick joke on both of us. Her voice was calm now, too calm. Then she walked out. No yelling, no tears, just footsteps, the door closing, and silence. I stood there, in that bathroom, with two tests at my feet, one fake, one real, and a life that felt completely shattered. That's when I understood something. The mystery was never whether we would have a child. The real mystery was which of us was the bigger monster, and what she was planning next. Because as the silence settled in, I noticed something else. Her keys were still on the table. I woke up to 37 missed calls and one text from my boss. We need to talk before you board that flight. The room felt smaller than it had the night before, like the walls were inching closer, trying to squeeze the last breath out of me. On the floor, the digital test still glowed. One word, pregnant. I didn't know if she was still in the building, or if she had already vanished into the city, executing whatever came next. I sat on the edge of the bed. Nausea rolled through me. Not morning sickness. Consequences. My carefully curated life was bleeding out in front of me. I opened my email. There it was. The thread she had forwarded. To my parents. To my sisters. The subject line read, "The man you think you know." I spent the next 3 hours trying to perform damage control. Typing, deleting, rewriting. Every word felt like a shovel, digging my grave a little deeper. I called my mother. She didn't let me finish. She said she was disgusted by the way I treated people. My own mother, the woman who taught me about integrity, now seeing me through the lens of my own cold calculations. That's when it clicked. The procedure she mentioned wasn't just about the pregnancy. It was about surgery, the removal of my reputation. I drove to her sister's house. I thought maybe I could talk my way back in. The door didn't open. Her brother-in-law stepped outside, told me if I set one foot on the grass, I wouldn't make it to Chicago. No raised voice, just certainty. I went back to the apartment. It wasn't empty. She was at the kitchen table, and she wasn't alone. A lawyer sat beside her. Not a divorce lawyer, a strategist. She looked different. The fear was gone, replaced by something colder. Clinical, detached, a mirror of me. She said she wasn't going to the clinic. She said she was keeping it, but I would never see the child. She slid papers across the table. I was to waive every right, every claim, every future argument, and in exchange, agree to a structured settlement that would drain my new salary dry. It wasn't paperwork. It was a ransom note for my own freedom. I looked at the documents, then at her, and I understood something. She wasn't the victim anymore. She was the architect of my ruin, and the most terrifying part was how calm she looked, watching it unfold. I asked her why she was doing this, if she hated me so much. She leaned forward, close enough that I could see how steady her breathing was. She whispered, "I don't hate you." She said she felt sorry for me, sorry that I was so terrified of being ordinary that I turned myself into a ghost. Then she told me the emails to my boss were just the beginning. She had a recording from a bathroom, the part where I called the baby an anchor, the part where my voice sounded like ice cracking. She said she would send it to the local news, to the company's HR department. If I didn't sign, right then, cold sweat gathered on my forehead. My promotion was already fragile. This would shatter it completely. I picked up the pen. My hand was shaking so badly. The tip barely touched the paper. I couldn't even form my own name. But the real mystery wasn't whether I would sign. It was something else. She was still wearing the engagement ring. I bought her 3 months ago. I stared at her hand, and that's when I noticed it. A bruise. Small, dark, shaped almost like fingers. Around her wrist. I looked at her lawyer, then back at her, and something shifted. She wasn't just protecting herself from me. She was running from something else. Something bigger. I let the pen fall. The sound echoed louder than it should have. I asked her, "Whose baby is it?" The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was deafening. She didn't blink, but the lawyer shifted in his seat, looked down at the floor, and in that tiny movement, I understood. The trap wasn't built for me. I was never the target. I was the scapegoat for a much larger lie. I stood up, walked away from the table, left the pen where it fell, and that's when it hit me. My guilt had blinded me to the timeline. We hadn't been together for 3 weeks. During the month she claimed she conceived, I was in London on a business trip. I watched her face carefully, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I saw panic, a crack in the armor. She had counted on my narcissism, on my fear. She knew I was so focused on my career, on my escape, that I wouldn't stop to do the math, wouldn't stop to ask if I was even the father. I looked at her and felt something strange. Pity. She was so desperate to outrun whatever she had done that she was willing to destroy my life, to build herself a cover story. I turned to the lawyer, told him to leave. He looked at her. She gave a small, defeated nod. The door clicked shut. Silence again. I sat back down, across from her. I didn't yell, didn't accuse. I just asked, who is the real father? That's when she broke. The cold mask shattered. She told me it was a mistake, a weak moment, while I was halfway across the world. She said the man was dangerous, that he wouldn't let her go. She needed me, not as a partner, as paperwork. She needed my name on the birth certificate, a legal reason to move to Chicago with me, a foundation for a restraining order. My promotion was her witness protection program, my child support, her escape fund. I looked at her, and for the first time in my life, I had a choice: be better or be the monster. I had been rehearsing. I could walk away, clear my name, tell my parents, tell my boss, expose everything, let her face the fallout alone. But then I looked at the bruise on her wrist. I thought about the man who put it there, and I thought about the life I was so desperate to defend. A life of titles, paychecks, ego, a hollow shell. I reached across the table, picked up the pen, but I didn't sign the waiver. Instead, I pulled out a blank sheet of paper, wrote a new agreement. I told her I would take her to Chicago. I would tell everyone the baby was mine. I would give her the name, the protection, the shield she needed. But the price was honesty, total honesty. Every detail, no more traps, no more games. As she started to speak, I realized something. We weren't hero and villain. We were two broken people who tried to destroy each other, only to discover we were the only ones who understood the cost of a lie. We moved to Chicago. 3 days later, my boss kept me, but I live under a microscope. My parents haven't fully forgiven me. We live in a house filled with silence and a nursery that stands empty because 2 weeks after we moved, she told me she lost the baby. Now I sit in my office, high above the city, glass walls, perfect view, and I wonder if there was ever a baby at all, if the miscarriage was just the final move in a game I never realized I was playing. She's in the other room right now, humming, soft, normal, and I know I will never know the truth. I am tied to a woman I don't trust, raising the memory of a child who may never have existed. We are bound together, not by love, but by the damage we inflicted on each other. The real cliffhanger isn't the truth. It's this: living inside a beautiful lie. Because the truth might leave you with nothing at all. I look at the office door, and sometimes I wonder if she's standing there, listening, waiting for the next move. Some stories end with answers. This one ends with doubt. Maybe there was a baby, maybe there wasn't. Maybe you became a better man. Or maybe you just found a more comfortable lie. What would you have done? Would you walk away and save yourself? Or step into the fire and call it redemption? Trust is fragile. Ego is loud. And sometimes the real villain is the version of ourselves we refuse to see. If this story made you think or made you uncomfortable, that was the point. Because the scariest confessions aren't about what we did. They're about what we were capable of doing. Comment below what you think really happened. Was there ever a baby? Or was the entire relationship built on strategy? If you enjoy deep psychological stories like this, subscribe. There's always another confession waiting. And next time, you might not know who to trust